I've been hiking the trails near my house for 6 years. I know every switchback, every creek crossing, every fallen tree. The camera was a Browning Recon Force, decent model, couple $100 retail. It had a lithium battery pack and a 32 gig SD card. I've used trail cameras before for wildlife photography, so I knew how they worked. This one was set to photo mode, motion activated, one photo every time the sensor triggered. I checked the strap. It was cinched tight, professionally mounted. The camera had been here a while. There was moss growing on the housing. I pulled the SD card, partly out of curiosity, partly because the camera was pointed at hikers, which felt wrong. I pocketed the card and kept hiking. When I got home, I put the card in my laptop. The card had 3,847 photos on it, going back 9 days. The first photos were what you'd expect: deer, a raccoon, a coyote at dawn. But on day 3, the photos shifted. There were photos of people, hikers on the trail, captured as they walked past the camera. Clear shots of their faces, their clothing, their backpacks. I scrolled through. Dozens of different hikers, all photographed without their knowledge. Creepy, but not criminal necessarily. People put cameras on trails. Then I noticed something that turned my stomach. The camera wasn't just catching random passersby. It was catching the same hiker, over and over. Me. There were 412 photos of me on this card, taken over the past 9 days. I went through the photos of myself chronologically. Day 3, 1 photo of me hiking past. Day 4, 3 photos. Day 5, 7. Day 6, 14. Day 7, 23. Day 8, 61. Day 9, which was yesterday, 187 photos. The frequency was increasing exponentially. But that wasn't the worst part. The earliest photos showed me walking past the camera on the trail, full body, distant. The later photos were different. They were closer, tighter. The camera was zoomed in on my face in the most recent ones. And in the last 30 photos, taken yesterday, I wasn't on the trail. I was in the parking lot. The camera had been moved. I went back to the trail the next morning to find where the camera had been repositioned. I found the tree where I'd originally found it, but the strap marks were still there. The camera was gone because I had it. But I found something else. 20 feet off the trail, in the underbrush, there was a second camera. This one was pointed at the first camera's location, like someone had been watching to see if anyone found it. I checked this camera's SD card. It had 2,100 photos, all taken from this angle. Every single photo showed the first trail camera on its tree, and in 6 of the photos, there was a person. I took the second camera too. I was angry, felt violated. I went home and went through the photos. The second camera had been placed 3 days before I found the first one. Whoever set this up knew I hiked this trail regularly and had been tracking my pattern. In one of the photos of me at the first camera, I could see my own face clearly. I looked curious, not alarmed. The person who took this photo would have seen that expression and known I wasn't scared yet. They'd have known I'd take the SD card and leave, which meant they'd know I'd come back, and they'd be watching when I did. I called the police. A deputy came out, looked at the photos, took the SD cards as evidence. He said it was likely a hunter or wildlife researcher who'd set up cameras illegally on public land. He filed a report and told me they'd check if any permits had been issued for trail cameras in that area. None had. He seemed to lose interest. He suggested I avoid the trail for a while. I did. 2 weeks passed. Then I got a package in the mail. No return address, postmarked from my own city. Inside was an SD card and a note. The note said, "You took 2 of my cameras. I have 9 more." I called the police again. This time they took it seriously. A detective was assigned. He came out, looked at the photos, checked the angles, and determined they were likely taken from the tree line about 40 yards behind my house. We went out there together. We found boot prints in the soft ground. Size 12, deep treads, consistent pressure suggesting someone had stood in one spot for a long time. The detective found something else. In the branches of a pine tree, about 10 feet up, there was a platform. Plywood, strapped to the branches with ratchet straps. A blind. The detective found more cameras in the tree blind. 3 of them, all pointed at my house, all motion activated. The SD cards in these cameras had over 5,000 photos combined, going back 4 months. For months, I'd only lived in this house for 6. Someone had started photographing me 2 months after I moved in. The detective pulled the photos. My car arriving and leaving. Me carrying groceries. Me mowing the lawn. Visitors coming and going, all photographed, all cataloged. And then, starting about 6 weeks ago, the photos shifted from surveillance to something else. There were photos of my house taken at times when I wasn't home. Photos of my back door, my windows, my locks. The detective had the blind photographed and dismantled. He sent the SD cards to the lab for fingerprinting. He told me to stay with someone, to not be alone in the house. I went to my sister's place across town. 3 days later, the detective called. They'd found prints on the camera housings. They matched a man named Carl Pruitt, 41, who had a history of stalking convictions, 2 prior restraining orders, and had served 18 months for criminal trespass. But here was the thing that stopped my heart. Carl Pruitt had never lived near me. He'd never had any contact with me. There was no connection between us whatsoever. The detective looked into it. The detective told me they were looking for Carl, but he'd gone off the grid. His apartment had been vacated, cleaned out. His phone was disconnected. No credit card activity, no vehicle registered. He'd prepared for this. He knew they'd come looking, and he'd already disappeared. The detective said the level of planning suggested this wasn't his first time. They checked his background. He'd done this before. 3 years ago, in a different state, he'd been convicted of stalking a woman after seeing her at a grocery store. He'd photographed her for 11 months before she found a camera in her bathroom. He'd built a blind in the tree behind her house, too. I stayed at my sister's for a month. The detective kept me updated. No sign of Carl. The trail cameras on the hiking trail had been there for 9 months, placed shortly after he saw me at the dental office. He'd been following my hiking patterns, learning my routes, positioning cameras along every trail I used. When the detective checked, they found 11 cameras total, spread across 4 different trails, all positioned to capture me. He'd mapped my entire outdoor life. He knew where I hiked, when I hiked, how long I hiked, and which trails I preferred on which days. He'd built a complete behavioral profile. I thought it was over. I'd moved, changed my routine, stopped hiking entirely. The trail cameras had been confiscated. The tree blind was gone. Carl was a fugitive with a warrant. 6 weeks of nothing. I started to relax. Then my sister found a trail camera in her backyard, strapped to the fence post, pointed at the back door, at the door I used every day. The SD card had 900 photos, all of me, coming and going from her house. For 6 weeks, since the day I arrived, Carl hadn't gone off the grid. He'd followed me to my sister's house. He'd been here the whole time, setting up, watching, waiting. I called the detective immediately. They came, searched the property, found nothing. No one in the yard, no one in the house. But they found something that the original responding officers had missed. Under the back porch, there was a space between the lattice work and the foundation. Inside that space, there was a sleeping bag, a water jug, food wrappers, and a handheld radio tuned to a frequency I didn't recognize. And there was a journal. The detective let me read one entry, the most recent. It was from the night before. It said, "I don't need the cameras anymore.